Welcome to your story for sleep. Here, every night begins with a quiet moment and a timeless tale. Let go of the day, take a deep breath, and settle in. Tonight's story will guide you gently into rest, through history, mystery, and calm. Close your eyes if you wish, and let the journey begin. Welcome to a journey beyond time, beyond fact and fiction, into a legend that has echoed across the centuries, the lost civilization of Atlantis. Was it real? A symbol? A warning? Or perhaps all of these at once? Tonight, as you settle in, we invite you into the gentle rhythm of ancient stories and forgotten worlds. Let your breath slow. Let the flicker of candlelight and the soft pages of time guide you. This is not just a story to hear, it's a world to feel. As the sea whispers in the background of our imagination, and starlight paints the corners of the unknown, we begin a tale that has fascinated minds for over 2,000 years, told and retold, questioned and studied, loved and feared. Atlantis. In this sleep story, we will explore the many dimensions of the myth, from Plato's original account to the echoes of Atlantis in myths around the world, from scientific theories to mystical interpretations, from archaeology to astronomy, from ancient Egypt to lost islands in the Caribbean. So lie back, breathe deeply, and allow yourself to drift through oceans of memory and time. Let us now turn our gaze to the one who first gave Atlantis a name and a place in the story of civilization, Plato. The Greek philosopher, living in the 4th century BCE, left behind works that shaped the foundations of Western thought. But among his many dialogues, two in particular have fascinated dreamers and seekers for centuries: Timaeus and Critias. In these writings, Plato describes an island kingdom larger than Libya and Asia combined, located beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we now know as the Strait of Gibraltar. Atlantis, he said, was a marvel of engineering and splendor, inhabited by a powerful and wealthy people who had descended from the god Poseidon himself. The Atlanteans built vast temples, lush gardens, and canals so wide that ships could pass with ease. They harnessed advanced technologies, developed strong navies, and expanded their influence across much of the known world. But their pride grew too great. In their desire for conquest, they sought to dominate other lands, including ancient Athens. And according to Plato, this greed led to their downfall. The gods punished Atlantis. In a single day and night of misfortune, the entire island was said to have sunk beneath the sea. But what was Plato's purpose in telling this story? Was it a parable? A philosophical allegory? Or was he preserving a distant memory, passed down from older sources? Plato claimed that the story of Atlantis was not his invention. He said it came from Solon, the famous Athenian lawmaker, who had visited Egypt and heard the tale from priests in the city of Sais. According to them, this catastrophe had happened 9,000 years before Plato's time. Solon returned to Greece intending to write a great poem about the lost land, but he never completed it. Plato, inspired by Solon's notes, took up the mantle. This detail, that the origin of the tale lies in ancient Egypt, would spark centuries of speculation. Could there be truth hidden in this legend? Had a real civilization once flourished before history began? Plato himself seemed torn. His dialogues blend myth with philosophical ideals, casting Atlantis as both a moral lesson and a historical riddle. He uses the fall of Atlantis to contrast with the virtues of an ideal Athens, wise, brave, and just. Some scholars believe he meant Atlantis to serve as a warning, a fictional example of how arrogance and hubris can destroy even the greatest of empires. And yet, the vivid detail, the precise geography, the link to Solon and Egyptian knowledge, these continue to raise questions. Did Plato simply craft an allegory, or did he give voice to something remembered? The legend had been born. And like the waves that swallowed Atlantis, it would ripple through time, stirring minds across continents and generations. Let us now follow those ripples into history, science, and myth. Plato's claim that the story came from Egypt is more than a passing reference. It's the key that has kept the Atlantis mystery alive for over 2 millennia. According to Plato, the Athenian lawmaker Solon traveled to Egypt around 600 BCE. There, in the temple of Neith at Sais, priests told him of a powerful civilization that existed 9,000 years earlier. These priests allegedly read the account from ancient stone tablets, older than any Greek memory. This part of the story has intrigued scholars, adventurers, and mystics. Could the Egyptians have preserved knowledge of a real ancient world that predated all recorded history? It is well known that Egyptian civilization itself was deeply rooted in time. Their own histories reached far back, so far in fact, that even their earliest texts speak of mythical ages, divine rulers, and lost knowledge. Some researchers believe that Egypt, as one of the world's oldest complex societies, may have served as a cultural bridge. Stories from even older times may have filtered into its priesthood, preserved through oral tradition or temple archives. This idea was especially appealing in the 19th and early 20th centuries, when Egyptology was still new and mysterious. Many Western writers, fascinated by hieroglyphs and pyramids, imagined a hidden history encoded in the monuments. But modern historians urge caution. There is no evidence, outside of Plato's dialogues, that the Egyptians ever spoke of Atlantis. No inscriptions, papyri, or records from Sais have surfaced to support the tale. Still, the allure of a hidden record remains strong. Some fringe theorists argue that the Library of Alexandria may once have housed scrolls about Atlantis, texts now lost forever. Others suggest that Plato may have had access to stories from pre-Homeric oral traditions, long forgotten. There is also the possibility that Plato's references to Egypt were a literary device. Egypt was viewed by the Greeks as a land of ancient wisdom. By attributing the Atlantis story to Egyptian priests, Plato lent his tale credibility and depth. And yet, one must ask, why Egypt? Why such specific geography, such detailed chronology? If the tale were wholly fictional, why anchor it in real places and times? Whether historical or symbolic, the Egyptian connection adds a layer of mystery, one that has endured from the sands of the Nile to the depths of our imagination. Let us now continue exploring how this legend echoed through other ancient cultures. While Plato may have been the first to write of Atlantis by name, the themes in his story, a great civilization lost to cataclysm, swallowed by water, are not unique to Greek thought. As we widen our gaze, we discover that echoes of this myth resound across many ancient cultures, each with its own version of a world that once was, and then was no more. In Mesopotamia, long before Plato, the Epic of Gilgamesh told of a great flood sent by the gods to wipe out humankind, sparing only one man, Utnapishtim, a clear parallel to the later tale of Noah in the Hebrew tradition. These flood myths carry the same moral warning, that civilizations rise and fall, and that divine justice often comes with water. In Hindu cosmology, the concept of cyclical ages and periodic destruction is fundamental. The Matsya Purana describes how the god Vishnu, in the form of a great fish, warns Manu, the first man, of an impending flood. Manu builds a boat and is saved, carrying the seeds of life to renew the earth. Again, water is the agent of destruction and rebirth. Among the Maya of Central America, there are stories of previous worlds, destroyed by great floods or fire, preceding the current age. In Aztec lore, the gods created and destroyed multiple suns, each age of the world ending in catastrophe. The parallels are uncanny. Polynesian traditions, especially those from islands like Rapa Nui, Easter Island, also speak of ancestral lands that sank into the ocean, or migrations from places long lost beneath the waves. These oral histories suggest a deep memory of rising seas or seismic events. In Norse mythology, Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, brings fire and flood, with the world reborn after immense destruction. The idea that water both ends and renews is nearly universal. Could all these myths be pointing to a shared, ancient memory? Some researchers propose that the end of the last ice age, around 11,000 years ago, brought massive sea level rise, submerging coastal civilizations and leaving behind fragmented memories preserved as myth. Others see archetypes at play, common patterns of human psychology that manifest in stories, whether or not they are based on specific events. But the similarities remain. Across time and geography, we find stories of lost lands, divine punishment, and water as a cleansing force. Atlantis, then, is not alone. It may be the most famous of the sunken lands, but it is part of a chorus, one voice among many, all singing the same haunting refrain. Once, there was a great world, and then, it was gone. In the next chapter, we will look deeper into one specific cultural link, the Egyptian context, and what it might reveal about Plato's sources and the real geography of his tale. The Egyptians, revered by the Greeks as the keepers of ancient wisdom, played a central role in Plato's account of Atlantis. Their mention wasn't just symbolic. It connected the story to a civilization that claimed knowledge reaching far beyond written records. According to Plato, it was Egyptian priests from the city of Sais who first told Solon about Atlantis. The temples of Egypt, vast and complex, were not only places of worship but also repositories of knowledge. Walls inscribed with hieroglyphs, hidden chambers, and sacred papyri, these were the archives of a civilization that measured time in thousands of years. Could these temples have preserved memories of a world before the world we know? The Temple of Neith in Sais, where the Atlantis tale allegedly originated, was associated with the goddess of creation and wisdom. Plato's texts claim that within its halls were records of great floods, ancient wars, and civilizations lost to time. Yet no surviving records from Sais mention Atlantis directly. Still, the temple's symbolic weight has inspired speculation for centuries. In terms of geography, Plato describes Atlantis as situated beyond the Pillars of Heracles, or the Strait of Gibraltar. From there, he claims, one could travel to other islands and ultimately to a vast continent, a description that has led many to associate Atlantis with the Americas, or with mythical continents in the Atlantic Ocean. Others propose that Plato misunderstood Egyptian symbology or cosmology. Perhaps the island was metaphorical, a reference to an isolated society, cut off by culture, belief, or even spiritual distance. Some even argue that the tale refers to an internal journey, encoded within myth and sacred geometry. As scholars and mystics have explored these connections, they've noticed thematic parallels between Egyptian beliefs and the Atlantis myth. Cycles of creation and destruction, the judgment of souls, divine punishment, and the rise and fall of kingdoms based on moral decline. Even the Egyptian understanding of time, not as linear but cyclical, supports the idea of repeated civilizations, of knowledge lost and rediscovered. Perhaps, then, the Egyptian context of Atlantis is not about one specific place or time, but about a worldview. A way of seeing history as layered, symbolic, and ever-repeating. In this view, Atlantis becomes not just a place beneath the sea, but a mirror of humanity's eternal quest for harmony, its inevitable fall into imbalance, and the eternal hope of return. Let us now turn to how Renaissance thinkers revived the legend, breathing new life into the old tale. The fall of the Roman Empire and the long stretch of the Middle Ages saw Plato's tale of Atlantis recede into the background, nearly forgotten except among monks and scholars who preserved ancient texts. But with the dawn of the Renaissance, the myth was reborn. This new era, marked by a revival of classical learning, exploration, and humanism, rekindled interest in the mysteries of antiquity. Artists, philosophers, and explorers looked to ancient Greece and Rome for inspiration. And in the writings of Plato, they rediscovered the story of Atlantis, a tale that now seemed more relevant than ever. As Europe expanded its horizons and encountered new worlds across the Atlantic, the idea of a sunken continent no longer seemed like fanciful myth. Instead, it ignited imaginations. What if, somewhere beyond the maps, Atlantis had once existed, and might even be found again? Writers and thinkers like Marsilio Ficino, a 15th-century Italian philosopher who translated Plato's dialogues into Latin, brought the Atlantis myth back into scholarly conversation. Ficino didn't merely see the tale as a moral fable. He, like many others of his time, believed that Plato's works concealed esoteric truths, that ancient wisdom was encoded within these myths. During this period, Atlantis was increasingly linked to other mystical ideas. Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, and Kabbalah flourished in elite circles. Thinkers sought to uncover the secrets of the universe by decoding ancient texts, symbols, and geometries. Atlantis was no longer just a lost city, it became a symbol of primordial knowledge, a beacon of the Golden Age. With the voyages of Columbus and others, the Renaissance world was discovering entire continents. The New World seemed to echo Plato's descriptions: vast, rich in resources, inhabited by advanced cultures unknown to Europe. Could the Americas be the remnants of Atlantis? This idea took hold. Maps from the 16th and 17th centuries often featured speculative landmasses in the Atlantic Ocean, fragments of a once great continent. Some even labeled these lands Atlantis, though no credible evidence had been found. Sir Francis Bacon, the English philosopher and early advocate for scientific method, added further mystique. In his 1627 work The New Atlantis, he envisioned a utopian island society devoted to knowledge, discovery, and the betterment of humankind. While fictional, Bacon's island bore the spiritual imprint of Plato's Atlantis, a civilization fallen, yet reborn with wisdom and purpose. In Spain, Jesuit priest Athanasius Kircher published one of the earliest maps showing Atlantis situated in the mid-Atlantic. He believed it was real, and possibly the origin point of human civilization. His illustrations, blending science and symbolism, would influence mystical thinkers for generations. Meanwhile, across Europe, art and literature embraced the image of a sunken world. Grand temples beneath the sea, mysterious ruins covered in coral, and forgotten scrolls sealed in stone vaults. Atlantis was no longer just a philosophical curiosity. It had become part of the cultural imagination. But why this resurgence? Why did Atlantis strike such a chord with Renaissance minds? Perhaps because the Renaissance itself was a rebirth, a moment when old truths were rediscovered, and when the line between myth and history seemed thin. Atlantis offered both caution and hope, a vision of a great society undone by arrogance, and a dream of what might be regained if wisdom prevailed. It also aligned with a deeper longing, the desire to reconnect with a time when humanity was closer to the divine, when nature and civilization were in harmony, and when knowledge was sacred. So, in the grand libraries of Florence, the secret societies of Prague, and the candlelit studies of London and Paris, the legend of Atlantis flickered once more. And it would not fade again. In the next chapter, we will examine how modern science began to engage with the myth, seeking to either prove it or to bury it forever. As Europe moved from the Renaissance into the Age of Enlightenment, the fascination with Atlantis took on a new form. No longer confined solely to mythology or philosophical allegory, the legend began to be examined through the lens of reason, exploration, and empirical evidence. The Enlightenment, a time of intellectual awakening and scientific curiosity, gave rise to scholars who wanted to know not just whether Atlantis had meaning, but whether it had actually existed. The idea of using observation and data to understand the natural world began to reshape every field, including history and mythology. Explorers sailed further across oceans, charting unknown lands and discovering new continents. Geographers began to speculate more seriously about the location of Atlantis. Some thought it might lie beneath the waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Others suspected it had been a part of the Americas or had vanished in the Mediterranean. In the 17th and 18th centuries, thinkers like Athanasius Kircher published elaborate maps and theories about where Atlantis could have been. Kircher, a Jesuit scholar, placed Atlantis off the coast of Africa, near the Azores, basing his claims on old maps and classical texts. His map, though not scientifically accurate, was widely reproduced and influenced generations of thinkers. Natural philosophers and geologists began questioning ancient flood myths and wondered if they might represent real, ancient catastrophes. The growing study of geology revealed evidence of sudden environmental changes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and rising seas. Could such events have inspired the legend? Some scientists considered whether Atlantis was a poetic memory of a real island civilization, wiped out by one of these catastrophes. The eruption of Thera, modern-day Santorini, which devastated the Minoan civilization around 1600 BCE, was especially compelling. The parallels were striking: an advanced culture suddenly destroyed by natural forces. This period also saw the rise of comparative mythology. Scholars began comparing stories from around the world, and saw recurring patterns: floods, sunken lands, fallen empires. The Atlantis myth, once confined to Greek thought, began to look like one part of a larger, global memory. But as science grew stronger, so did skepticism. Many Enlightenment thinkers dismissed Atlantis as a fable, a philosophical parable rather than a historical account. To them, the lack of physical evidence was telling. Yet, the tension between skepticism and belief never fully resolved. The scientific method asked for proof, and Atlantis, mysterious and submerged, offered none. But its emotional power, its imaginative depth, kept it alive. For every scientist who wrote Atlantis off as a myth, there was a dreamer, a poet, a philosopher, or an amateur historian, who continued to seek the lost land, not just in the ocean, but in the soul of civilization. In the next chapter, we'll meet one of the most influential of these dreamers, Ignatius Donnelly, the 19th century writer who would bring Atlantis back into public imagination with a force that still resonates today. As the 19th century progressed, interest in Atlantis surged again, this time, not in ancient temples or cryptic scrolls, but in the pages of modern print. The legend gained new life thanks to an American politician and writer named Ignatius Donnelly. In 1882, Donnelly published a book titled Atlantis, The Antediluvian World. It became a sensation. In this ambitious work, Donnelly argued that Atlantis was not only real, but the cradle of all known civilization. He claimed that after the cataclysmic destruction of the island, its survivors spread across the globe, founding the early societies of Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, and the Americas. According to Donnelly, the similarities between ancient pyramids, myths, and languages around the world were not coincidental. They were echoes of a single lost source, Atlantis. While his work was not based on archaeological evidence, it was persuasive in tone and rich in detail, blending myth, history, and pseudoscience. Donnelly cited Plato, ancient legends, and linguistic comparisons. He linked Atlanteans to the Aryan race, a concept popular in 19th century racial theory. This is where Donnelly's influence becomes problematic. In trying to prove a single source for civilization, he also laid the groundwork for dangerous ideas of cultural superiority. Later thinkers would distort these ideas even further, blending Atlantis with occultism, eugenics, and esoteric racism. Still, Donnelly's book was groundbreaking in one respect. It brought Atlantis into popular science and gave it a new kind of credibility. For many, he made the legend seem not just plausible, but essential to understanding human history. His legacy is complex. On one hand, he inspired generations of writers, explorers, and pseudo-historians. On the other, he contributed to myths of racial hierarchy and colonial thinking that would shadow the 20th century. But one thing is clear, with Donnelly's pen, Atlantis became more than a philosophical parable. It became a theory, one that would ripple across the world, for better or worse. Next, we will explore how Atlantis became a symbol for various civilizations across continents, including unexpected interpretations from Africa. As the legend of Atlantis spread and evolved, some theorists turned their attention away from the Atlantic Ocean entirely, and toward the vast deserts of North Africa. One location in particular has captured widespread imagination: the Rick-Hat structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara. Situated in Mauritania, this massive circular geological formation, visible even from space, bears an uncanny resemblance to Plato's description of Atlantis, a city made up of concentric rings of land and water. The Rick-Hat structure spans over 40 kilometers in diameter, and its symmetrical design, a series of circular ridges, has led many to wonder: could this be the eroded remnants of a once great city? Plato described Atlantis as having alternating rings of land and sea, with a central island. Supporters of the Rick-Hat theory point to the structure's layout, location beyond the Pillars of Heracles, and even to traces of ancient riverbeds nearby, as possible evidence that the area once had far more water than today. Skeptics argue that the Rick-Hat structure is a natural geological dome, formed by erosion and uplift. There are no definitive signs of ancient civilization, no artifacts, no ruins, no inscriptions. And yet, the site continues to intrigue researchers and dreamers alike. Beyond the Eye of the Sahara, there are also African oral traditions that some believe echo Atlantean themes. In Mali, for instance, the Dogon people possess intricate astronomical knowledge, including details about the Sirius star system, that some fringe researchers attribute to ancient, possibly lost civilizations. Although mainstream scholars caution against romanticizing or misinterpreting indigenous knowledge, the idea that Africa may hold keys to ancient, forgotten chapters of human history remains compelling. Some Afrocentric theories suggest that Atlantis may have had roots in ancient Nubia or the Sahel region, and that its memory was absorbed into the rich spiritual and cultural traditions of the continent. Whether literal or metaphorical, these African connections offer a powerful reminder that the myth of Atlantis transcends geography. It is a global mirror, reflecting humanity's longing to remember something ancient, something profound, perhaps something lost not just beneath oceans, but within ourselves. Next, we'll journey into the 20th century, where mystics and psychics revived the legend of Atlantis in unexpected ways. In the early 20th century, a new voice revived the legend of Atlantis, not from academia or archaeology, but from the realm of mysticism. That voice belonged to Edgar Cayce, a man often called the sleeping prophet. Cayce, an American mystic and clairvoyant, claimed to enter a trance-like state during which he could access the Akashic records, a supposed cosmic archive of every human thought, action, and event. Among his most sensational revelations were visions of Atlantis. According to Cayce, Atlantis had been a highly advanced civilization, far more sophisticated than previously imagined. He described it as a continent located in the Atlantic Ocean, with knowledge of crystal technology, levitation, and even energy sources that rivaled modern science. He said the Atlanteans had developed flying machines and death rays, inventions that ultimately led to their own destruction. But Cayce didn't stop there. He prophesied that remnants of Atlantis would rise again, literally. He claimed that part of Atlantis would be discovered in the vicinity of the Bahamas, specifically around Bimini, between the years 1968 and 1969. Interestingly, in 1968, divers off the coast of Bimini discovered a strange underwater formation, a row of large stones now known as the Bimini Road. Some believed this was the long-lost evidence Cayce had predicted. Scientists, however, remained skeptical, considering the formation to be a natural geological feature. Still, Cayce's readings sparked widespread fascination. He spoke of souls reincarnating from Atlantis, claiming many people living in the modern world had once lived on the sunken continent. These reincarnated souls, he believed, carried karmic debts and spiritual lessons tied to Atlantis's fall. Cayce also wove Atlantis into the broader spiritual destiny of humanity. He envisioned a future where ancient knowledge would be rediscovered and humanity would awaken to a higher level of consciousness. For him, Atlantis was both a warning and a promise, a memory of greatness, a fall from grace, and a hope for spiritual rebirth. Though dismissed by mainstream scholars, Cayce's impact on popular culture was enormous. His ideas influenced books, films, and a generation of spiritual seekers looking for meaning beyond the material world. To this day, many who follow New Age philosophies regard Atlantis not as myth, but as metaphysical truth, a lost cradle of wisdom waiting to return. As we turn from mystical visions to archaeological evidence, one candidate often stands out in discussions about a possible real-world Atlantis, the Minoan civilization of the Aegean Sea, and the cataclysmic eruption of the island of Santorini. The Minoans thrived on the island of Crete and surrounding territories around 2000 to 1450 BCE. They were one of the earliest advanced civilizations in Europe, known for their remarkable palaces, sophisticated art, and complex social structures. At the height of their power, the Minoans commanded trade routes across the Mediterranean and influenced cultures far beyond their shores. But their reign did not last. Around 1600 BCE, a massive volcanic eruption, one of the most powerful in recorded history, struck the island of Thera, now known as Santorini. The explosion was so violent that it likely triggered tsunamis, caused widespread destruction, and possibly led to climatic changes. The eruption devastated nearby settlements and may have played a key role in the Minoan decline. Santorini, a crescent-shaped island formed from the remains of that volcanic blast, reveals layers of ash and ruins frozen in time. Excavations at Akrotiri, an ancient city buried beneath volcanic material, have unveiled remarkably preserved frescoes, buildings, and streets, a Minoan city seemingly lost in a day. This sudden disappearance, combined with the Minoans' advanced culture and sea-based power, has led many scholars to wonder, was this the true story behind Plato's Atlantis? Let's compare. Plato describes a technologically advanced island civilization destroyed in a single night by natural forces. The Minoans were certainly advanced, and the Santorini eruption fits the sudden cataclysm narrative. The timeline is closer than Plato's claimed 9,000 years, but some argue that this figure may have been symbolic, mistranslated, or misinterpreted. Moreover, Crete and Thera lie east of the Pillars of Heracles, not beyond them, seemingly contradicting Plato's geography. Yet many believe that beyond could have had a broader or different meaning to ancient Greeks, or that Plato may have distorted details for philosophical or dramatic purposes. Still, the parallels are striking. An island empire, wiped out by a natural disaster, whose remnants lie hidden under ash and sea. Could Plato have based his story on distant memories of the Minoan catastrophe? Could the Egyptian priests have retained oral tales of this devastation, passed down over centuries? Or is this simply another case of history echoing myth? Whatever the answer, the story of the Minoans adds a new layer to the Atlantis mystery, grounding it in real soil, under real ash, and in ruins that we can still walk through today. As we enter the modern era, the mystery of Atlantis has not faded, it has evolved. With the rise of geology, seismology, and oceanography in the 20th and 21st centuries, the search for Atlantis moved from the realm of myth to the maps of the ocean floor. Scientists began asking a bold question: if Atlantis really sank beneath the sea, could we find its remnants today? Let us begin with geology. Earth's crust is dynamic, shaped by the movement of tectonic plates. Continents drift, seas open and close, land rises and falls, but these processes typically occur over millions of years, not in a single night as Plato described. Geologists argue that no known landmass the size of Atlantis could have disappeared so quickly in human history. Sudden subsidence of a large continent is considered geologically impossible. However, smaller land collapses or coastal sinkings, those are possible. In fact, we know they've happened. For example, the Doggerland area in the North Sea once connected Britain to mainland Europe. Rising sea levels after the last ice age submerged it gradually. Similarly, the Bimini Road in the Bahamas, a curious underwater rock formation, has inspired theories about sunken architecture, though most scientists consider it a natural formation. Then there's the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a vast underwater mountain range that runs down the center of the Atlantic Ocean. Some theorists have speculated that this ridge might represent the remnants of a lost continent. However, oceanographers have mapped the Atlantic floor extensively. They found no sunken landmass matching Atlantis's description. One promising field is submarine archaeology. Underwater ruins have been discovered off the coasts of India, Japan, and Cuba. Some of these structures are thought to predate known civilizations, though their origins remain uncertain. Enthusiasts claim they might be linked to Atlantis or other forgotten cultures. Satellite imaging and sonar mapping have also fueled speculation. Anomalies spotted on the ocean floor, strange lines, rectangular shapes, are sometimes cited as evidence of submerged cities. Most of these, however, turn out to be data glitches or natural formations. Yet, the allure remains. Might there be something waiting to be discovered beneath the waves, a city swallowed by the sea, its walls now resting silently in darkness? Critics argue that Atlantis is entirely fictional. But others suggest that while Plato may have invented details, his story was rooted in a real event, a distant memory of a tsunami, a quake, or a drowned island, passed down through generations. Science has not found Atlantis, but it has given us tools to search deeper than ever before. And the search itself, driven by curiosity and imagination, continues to reveal forgotten parts of our planet. Even as science casts doubt on the physical existence of Atlantis, the myth itself has only grown, not beneath the ocean, but within the imagination of humanity. Atlantis has become more than just a lost city. It is a mirror of human longing, for perfection, for wisdom, for a golden age that once was, or could still be. In the Renaissance, writers and philosophers revived the tale, seeing in it a symbol of divine order lost to pride. Atlantis became a metaphor for the fragile balance between knowledge and morality. It inspired utopian visions, most famously in Francis Bacon's New Atlantis, a 17th-century philosophical novel imagining an island society ruled by reason, science, and spiritual harmony. As centuries passed, the legend wove its way into fantasy and fiction. In the 19th and 20th centuries, Atlantis appeared in the works of Jules Verne, H.P. Lovecraft, and later, in comic books, science fiction, and animated films. It became a canvas on which authors painted their hopes and fears, from alien civilizations to underwater empires, from forgotten wisdom to dystopian warnings. In modern media, Atlantis is often portrayed as a lost paradise, rich in crystal technology, ruled by wise kings, or sometimes by gods themselves. It embodies a yearning for lost greatness, a world before the fall. Psychologists, too, have explored the legend's meaning. Carl Jung saw Atlantis as an archetype, a shared symbol within the collective unconscious. A sunken city, representing what humanity has forgotten or buried deep within its soul. Atlantis has been reimagined by spiritual movements as well. In esoteric circles, it is said to have held secrets of energy, healing, and the soul's evolution, knowledge lost in the flood, waiting to be rediscovered in a new age. Whether as allegory, prophecy, or dream, the idea of Atlantis continues to resonate. It speaks to something deeply human, a sense of loss, a hope for rediscovery, and a belief that ancient truths might still lie waiting beneath the surface, both of the sea and of ourselves. So, even if Atlantis never existed in stone or sea, it exists, profoundly, in story. And that may be the most powerful kind of truth of all. In the modern age, the legend of Atlantis has taken on new forms, blending with speculative science, alternative archaeology, and spiritual exploration. The island that once vanished beneath the waves now surfaces in books, online forums, documentaries, and meditative circles. Let's begin with the New Age movement. Many modern spiritual seekers believe that Atlantis was not merely a place, but a highly advanced civilization, far ahead of its time, both technologically and spiritually. According to these interpretations, Atlanteans possessed psychic abilities, energy crystals, and a profound connection to the cosmos. Some even say they communicated telepathically, harnessed the Earth's magnetic grid, and accessed universal knowledge through pyramidal structures or energy vortexes. This version of Atlantis often ties into ideas about lost wisdom, the evolution of consciousness, and humanity's forgotten potential. It's not unusual to hear claims that souls alive today once lived in Atlantis, reincarnated to carry forward its lessons or to help prevent a similar downfall. Then there are the alternative historians and pseudo-archaeologists. These thinkers often blend scientific language with fringe ideas. They might suggest that Atlantis was located in Antarctica, submerged due to a pole shift, or that it lies beneath the ice sheets of Greenland, or in the Caribbean, beneath the Bermuda Triangle. Theories abound, from maps showing mysterious structures to alleged satellite images of underwater cities. One of the most famous figures in this realm was Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet of the early 20th century. In trance states, Cayce claimed to have visions of Atlantis, describing a powerful culture that misused crystal energy and caused its own destruction. He predicted that remnants of Atlantis would be discovered near the Bahamas in the late 20th century. His followers continue to study his writings today. Some modern authors also link Atlantis to extraterrestrials, proposing that it was a colony of advanced beings from other worlds, possibly from the star system Sirius or the Pleiades. These stories often appear in the context of ancient astronaut theories, where ancient gods are reinterpreted as visitors from space. Mainstream scientists largely dismiss these ideas, citing a lack of credible evidence. And yet, the power of the Atlantis myth persists, because it taps into something beyond evidence. It speaks to our desire for meaning, our longing to believe that the past held secrets we are only now beginning to rediscover. In the world of dreams, symbols, and story, Atlantis lives on. Among all the theories that attempt to place Atlantis in real-world geography, one stands out as both compelling and plausible: the Minoan hypothesis. According to this view, the legend of Atlantis may be a distant cultural memory of the Minoan civilization, centered on the island of Crete, and more dramatically, the volcanic island of Santorini, known in ancient times as Thera. The Minoans thrived between 3000 and 1400 BCE. They were a maritime power, with advanced architecture, complex trade networks, written language, and a rich artistic tradition. Their cities, like Knossos, were filled with multi-story palaces, elaborate frescoes, and sophisticated plumbing systems. The Minoan world was one of elegance, color, and surprising technological development. But around 1600 BCE, something catastrophic happened. On the island of Thera, one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in human history, tore the island apart. The explosion was so massive that it likely caused tsunamis, climate disruption, and regional devastation, effects that may have reached as far as Egypt and the Levant. Some archaeologists and historians believe that this disaster contributed to the sudden decline of the Minoan civilization. While not the sole cause, invasion and internal factors played roles. The eruption marks a turning point. So how does this connect to Atlantis? Let's recall Plato's description: a powerful island civilization, advanced in technology and influence, destroyed in a single cataclysm. A rich culture swallowed by the sea. Though the timeline doesn't perfectly match Plato's account, many scholars believe that oral memories of the Thera eruption could have been passed down over generations, gradually mythologized, distorted, and eventually woven into philosophical storytelling. There are even topographical similarities. Santorini's crescent shape suggests a once central island, now vanished, much like Plato's circular city of Atlantis. Underwater explorations have revealed submerged ruins and structures near the island, although not of mythical proportions. This hypothesis does not suggest that Plato was writing literal history. Rather, he may have taken pieces of ancient events, filtered through generations of storytelling, and shaped them into a philosophical parable. But to those who seek a grounded origin for the myth, a real event that could have inspired centuries of fascination, the Minoan hypothesis offers a bridge between history and legend. Atlantis, in this view, becomes not a lost utopia or alien colony, but a symbol born from real tragedy, preserved through culture, and transformed into a timeless story. Across the ancient world, myths of great floods echo like distant thunder through time. From Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, from the Arctic to the Pacific, cultures that never met each other all tell strikingly similar stories of a deluge so vast, so overwhelming, that it reshaped the earth and ended civilizations. In Mesopotamian legend, the Epic of Gilgamesh speaks of Utnapishtim, chosen by the gods to survive a world-ending flood. He builds a great boat, saves animals, and eventually lands on a mountaintop, a tale that would later inspire the biblical story of Noah. In Hindu tradition, the god Vishnu takes the form of a giant fish to warn Manu, the first man, of an oncoming flood. Manu too builds a boat and survives, carrying the seeds of life into a new age. The Greeks themselves had the story of Deucalion and Pyrrha, who survived Zeus's punishment by flood. The Aztecs, Hopi, and Inca of the Americas all had tales of great waters swallowing lands and people, followed by rebirth. In the South Pacific, oral histories from Polynesian islands recall lands vanishing beneath the sea, forcing their ancestors to set sail in search of new homes. The Maori of New Zealand spoke of a flood that ended the world of their ancestors. Even Norse myth includes the drowning of the world in the waters of Ragnarok, before the earth rises again, renewed. So why are flood myths so universal? Some scholars believe that these are archetypes, stories formed deep in the human psyche, symbolizing rebirth through destruction. Others point to geological evidence. The end of the last ice age brought massive sea level rise, flooding coastlines and displacing early human communities. Perhaps these stories are memories, distorted by time but rooted in truth. In 1997, geologists William Ryan and Walter Pittman proposed the Black Sea Deluge hypothesis, that around 5600 BCE, a sudden breach of the Bosporus flooded the once freshwater Black Sea basin with saltwater from the Mediterranean, raising levels rapidly and displacing Neolithic populations. Some speculate that this traumatic event may have birthed some of the earliest European flood legends. Likewise, the discovery of sunken settlements off the coasts of India, Japan, and the Caribbean continues to stir questions. Did early civilizations fall victim to rising seas? Were these the real-world inspirations for tales of Atlantis? It's difficult to say with certainty. Myth and memory are like sediments, layered, compressed, and shaped by time. But the prevalence of flood myths across human cultures suggests something deeply felt and profoundly remembered. Whether metaphor or history, they remind us of our fragility, our awe before nature, and the possibility of beginning anew. And perhaps, just perhaps, they point to real events that ancient peoples never forgot. As we draw closer to the final chapters of our journey, we'll now examine how modern science continues the search, above and below the waves, for the lost truth behind Atlantis. In the age of satellites, sonar, and deep-sea exploration, the myth of Atlantis has found new life, not in dusty scrolls, but in digital data. What once belonged only to philosophers and poets now beckons scientists, geologists, oceanographers, and even engineers. Could the ocean's hidden floors hold secrets we've yet to uncover? With the advent of satellite imagery and oceanic mapping, researchers have scanned the ocean floor in remarkable detail. Vast ridges, sunken plateaus, and geometric patterns have sparked renewed speculation. Some claim to see roads, walls, or even city-like grids in the depths of the Atlantic, but most experts caution that these are natural formations, often misinterpreted. One such case emerged in 2009, when Google Earth images appeared to show a grid-like pattern off the coast of northwest Africa. Atlantis hunters were quick to declare a breakthrough. But oceanographers quickly explained the city was simply sonar tracks left by survey ships. Still, the excitement was telling. The world is watching, and still hoping. Marine archaeologists have made extraordinary discoveries, from ancient shipwrecks in the Black Sea to submerged ruins off the coast of India, Japan, and even the Bahamas. Some of these sites are so old that they challenge our understanding of early civilizations. At Yonaguni, off the coast of Japan, divers discovered massive underwater rock formations that resemble pyramids, stairs, and columns. Are they natural, or remnants of a lost people? The debate continues. In the Caribbean, legends of sunken cities persist, and while most are dismissed as folklore, the warm, shallow waters offer promising grounds for archaeological exploration. Modern sonar, LiDAR, and photogrammetry now allow researchers to model submerged landscapes in 3D, revealing what the world might have looked like before the Great Floods. These tools, combined with geological data and ancient maps, create compelling possibilities. Could there be ruins beneath layers of sediment, waiting to be revealed? The mystery of Atlantis lives on, not only in stories, but in science. Each dive, each scan, each new technology brings us closer, not just to answers, but to the heart of the myth itself. Because whether Atlantis was ever real or not, our search for it reveals something timeless, a deep desire to understand our past, to explore the unknown, and to uncover lost parts of ourselves. And as we now move toward the symbolic meaning of Atlantis, as metaphor, as myth, and as mirror, we begin to see that sometimes the greatest discoveries lie not in the ocean, but in how we choose to remember and imagine. As the search for Atlantis shifts from maps to meaning, from sonar to story, a deeper truth begins to emerge. Perhaps Atlantis was never just a place, but a mirror of humanity's dreams, and its failures. Plato may have used the tale to critique the arrogance of nations, to show how power without virtue leads to ruin. In this way, Atlantis becomes timeless, not a sunken island, but an idea, a warning wrapped in wonder. Through the centuries, each era reimagined Atlantis in its own image. Renaissance thinkers saw it as a golden age of knowledge. Enlightenment philosophers sought in it the blueprint of utopia. Theosophists imagined a mystical homeland of ancient souls. And modern minds still project onto it their hopes, fears, and longings for a lost wholeness. In psychology, some interpret Atlantis as a collective memory, not of one specific place, but of the many cultures and wisdoms lost through time. Others see it as an archetype, the doomed civilization, the paradise lost, the fall before the lesson. Atlantis asks us, what is the cost of forgetting harmony? What happens when we grow too proud, too greedy, too far from nature or spirit? And yet, the legend also offers hope. Because if Atlantis fell, perhaps we can rise. If knowledge was lost, perhaps it can be rediscovered. If the sea swallowed something, perhaps we can learn to listen to the tides of time. Atlantis endures because it speaks to something universal, the fragile balance between greatness and downfall, between civilization and chaos, between memory and myth. And as we close our eyes tonight, letting this ancient tale echo in our thoughts, we might wonder, what is your Atlantis? What have you forgotten, and what still waits to be found? Let us now gently return to the present, with gratitude for the dream and the mystery. And so, our journey draws to a close. We have traveled through time and legend, across sunken continents and ancient scrolls, through myths whispered by stars and theories spoken in classrooms. Whether Atlantis was real or imagined, what remains is its power to make us wonder. Perhaps the true meaning of Atlantis lies not beneath the sea, but within us, in our endless search for truth, for beauty, for forgotten wisdom. As you drift deeper into sleep, let the waves of this story carry you gently, through calm waters, starlit skies, and dreams that stretch beyond time. Thank you for listening. And remember, some stories never fade. They live on, waiting to be dreamed again. Good night.